Welcome to the Happy Homemaker. Today I am making my favorite non-toxic homemade bread. This is one of the things that I make every few days. Sometimes I can go a couple of weeks, but I never run out of this flour. This is non-toxic Italian flour from Italy because American wheat is not the best. So if you can get this flour, I get it on Amazon, it's perfect. And I start very easily with 3 cups of this flour. So you'll see me measuring that into a mixer. And it's so much easier if you have a KitchenAid mixer. You just mix everything in. You can make this by hand as well, but you should probably spend about 10 to 12 minutes kneading the dough. So that's the only difference. So I make it in the mixer. It's so much quicker. It does all the work for you. So I'm putting 3 cups of flour into the mixer, as well as 2 tablespoons of sugar that I just added there, and then 1.5 teaspoons of salt, which gives it a really good flavor, both the sugar and the salt. And then I'm also adding, I'm looking at the recipe there, 2 teaspoons of yeast, of dry active yeast, and that makes it very easy. You don't have to have fresh yeast anymore. I haven't seen fresh yeast in the grocery store in a long time. And then I am also adding 1/2 cup plus 1 tablespoon of warm water. Make sure it's not too hot so that it doesn't kill the yeast. And 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of whole milk, also warmed in the microwave for about 30 seconds. That's what I do. So I'm also adding 4 tablespoons of butter melted, and this is such a tender crumb. The recipe makes it a very tender bread. It's delicious, it's fluffy, it rises for an hour and a half for the first rise and an hour and a half for the second. So I'm just adding my dough hook there, and I just mix this up for a few seconds until all the flour is incorporated. And you'll see me using the spatula there, just helping it along. And that makes it very easy. And it's such a nice bread to bake. And then I just turn it up to medium and I let it go for 5 minutes. So it only stays in the mixer kneading for 5 minutes at the 4 to 6 level on the mixer. If you're doing this by hand, as I said, you should probably knead it for 10 to 12 minutes by hand. And you can find many tutorials online on how to do that. And this is the dough right before the first rise. You see I made a ball of dough, and I leave it in the same bowl that I use to mix it in. That makes it a lot easier, less dishes to do after I'm done. And then I just cover it with a dishcloth, a dish towel. So I just leave it for an hour and a half like that, and then you'll see what it looks like after an hour and a half. It has risen, it has doubled or tripled in bulk. It looks very fluffy, and then I just have to mist the loaf pan with some cooking spray. I'm using butter cooking spray here, but you can use whatever you have on hand. It does not need to be anything special. So you just do that, and then now I'm going to form the loaf. I just put some flour over plastic wrap because I don't like to get flour embedded into my cutting board. It's more difficult to clean. So I'm just adding the dough to the cutting board or to roll it out. And you don't need a rolling pin or anything like that. I just do this with my hands. And you can see that I have there the loaf pan right in front of me because I like to keep it about the same size as the loaf pan. Sometimes it doesn't always work, but I do this first fold in thirds, turn it over, and then open it into a rectangle that's roughly the size of the loaf pan. And that just makes it easier to fit it in once it's been rolled out. And you see that I'm trying to measure it and see that it's as equal as it can be. And then I'm just rolling it onto itself. And then I'm pinching the seams. There's a seam there that I pinch together, and then I just put the whole loaf into the loaf pan. And that's how it rises. It's a beautiful bread, and if you use this plastic wrap trick. You don't have any cleanup. I've been doing this for, gosh, at least 20 years, and it makes it very easy. So I don't like a lot of cleanup. Make this as easy as possible so that I can actually make it a lot. So now this is going to be rising again for another hour and a half, and it can go up to 2 hours depending on how chilly your kitchen is. I'm going to cover it with a dish towel again and let it rise for, this took about an hour and a half. My kitchen was warm today. So after it's risen, this is what it looks like, and I'm going to do an egg wash. You don't have to do the egg wash. It browns beautifully without it, and it keeps a lot more volume on top if you don't do the egg wash. But I like the egg wash because I like the brown on top, so that's what I'm doing. And the egg wash is very easy. It's just one egg, one large egg with about 1 tablespoon of water, and you just mix that up with a fork and then just brush it on. It doesn't rise as much like this, but like I said, I like the color. So it's a beautiful bread. The crumb is very light, so it's a very light bread as well because of the butter and the milk. It makes it very tender. So this is one of the best recipes that I've ever found, and it's so easy. It's only 5 minutes in the mixer. Well, 1 minute to mix it up and incorporate the flour, and 5 minutes kneading. So it doesn't take any time at all, just the rising time, but then you can be off doing other things. So this is what it looks like after 35 minutes at 350. So at the end of the rising time, you can turn on your oven to 350, and that's what it looks like. And then I take it out of the loaf pan immediately and leave it on a rack to cool. And then it cools for about 2 hours before I can slice it. And I like to do that so that the slices will stay together. I slice the whole thing at once and freeze it, and you'll see me doing that because homemade bread only lasts a couple of days most of the time, unless you store it very differently, which I don't do. So I've decided to just slice it, and I got about 13 slices out of this bread today. Sometimes I get 14 if they're much thinner, but today I got 13 slices, 1 slice for me because of all the work that I did, and then 12 slices to put in the freezer, and I'll show you the whole process. It's very easy. Make sure you're using a serrated knife. I'm sure you know that, a bread knife. It really helps to have the long knife that goes through easily so that you don't hurt your bread and so that it doesn't fall apart. It is very important to let it cool completely before you attempt to do this. So you see me putting one aside there, and then I do individual slices. So this is optional, of course, because I use these Ziploc bags with the sliders, and these are a little expensive. So every time I do this, I'm using 12 of them, but they sell them in boxes of like 42. So, you know, if you make this bread once a week, it's roughly 1 month's worth of these bags, and they're about $6.30 for the box of Ziploc bags. So it's really not that expensive. I try to budget as much as I can because we have a very strict food budget. We always have. That's one of the things that my husband drilled into me as soon as we got married, and I didn't have any experience budgeting for a household. He's the one who taught me all of that. So that's what I still do after 24 years of marriage. I budget very easily, and with the prices of groceries now, it's insane. If you don't budget, your whole money goes on food, and then you get to the end of the month, and how do you pay for everything else? So it's a very smart thing to do. But I take the time to use these bags. I have tried to reuse them and to just get out the crumbs after I take one slice of bread out and to empty it out and then save them. But I found that they still get moldy because you can never get all the crumbs out, and then the bag gets moldy after a week, because I tend to make this every week or every 10 days or so. So that didn't work for me. So I use new bags now. But I tried to be more frugal. It just didn't work out so well in this case. but I think that it's the thought that counts. And you can also use larger bags, like the gallon size bags, and put 4 or 5 slices in each one of them if your family will eat that, because then they're not going to stick together. I just think it's neater to have the smaller bags, but I have done the gallon size as well, because then you still have individual slices. And usually only my husband eats this, because he refuses to eat American bread and store-bought bread because it's such low quality. And so we've decided to bake all of our bread. And this is what it looks like in the freezer. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll come back for more. The Happy Homemaker is a channel that I love. Thanks so much for being here, and make sure you like, you subscribe. It increases the reach of my channel and will help me out so much. I love to post everything homemaking related.